Jai Bhim and Namo Buddhaya. Good evening and good morning to everyone. Thank you for joining us. On behalf of Mahaprajapati Upasika Sangha, I welcome you all. I am Trupti Aditya Dhoke, member of Mahaprajapati Upasika Sangha. I currently reside in Santa Clara, California. We have with us Mr. Aditya Dhoke from Santa Clara for assisting in this event as well. Thank you, Aditya, for joining us. On the occasion of International Women's Day, this event is organized by Mahaprajapati Upasika Sangha to gain insights on women liberation movement and Buddhism, which is one of the important considerations for the progress of the society. International Women's Day is a global event celebrated annually on 8th March to commemorate the cultural, political, and socio-economic achievements of women, to raise awareness, to inspire and empower us all to take action for gender and social equality. On this occasion, we have taken an opportunity to speak about the topic Women Liberation Movement and Buddhism. At this event, I welcome our chief guest, Reverend Aya Santusika, head of Karuna Buddhist Vihara, located in Boulder Creek, United States, California, and Dr. Alka Dhoke, gynecologist and social activist from Mumbai, India, to speak about women in liberation movement and Buddhism. I would like to start this event by paying respect to Tathagat Gautam Buddha by playing a song sung by one of our members, Mr. Kamlesh Kamre.
Om Namo Tathagata Namostu Gautama. Om Namo Tathagata Namostu Gautama. Jnanadeepa Chetami Dhalavi Tama. Om Namo Tathagata Namostu Gautama. Om Namo Tathagata Namostu Gautama. Sadaya Hridaya Abhayadam Deitu Sware. Antaranga Shanta Karita Jivanataye. Sakala Malina Jala Nyasa Bhima Shakti De. अखिल भुवन उजड़ न्यास प्रेम भक्ति दे आ करि सशक्त करि समर्थ ये नरोत्तमा ओम नमो तथागता नमोस्तु गौतमा Om Namo Tathagata Namostu Gautama.
Thank you, Kamlesh, for such a wonderful song. Mahaprajapati Upasika Sangha works and focuses on encouragement and empowerment of women towards social welfare by following the principles of Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar and teachings of Buddha. I would like to highlight the aims and goals of this organization. The aims and goals are to bring together all the Buddhist women and build strong solidarity alliance organizations and projects inspired by noble mission of Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar, to provide platform and solidarity to the marginalized women and fight for justice for the women affected by caste system and patriarchy. to publish literature, produce magazines, blogs, websites, and social media platforms for the spread of Buddhism. All these aims and goals, I would like, after this, all these aims and goals, I would like to speak about current achievements of this organization. The organization was started on September 2021. Currently, we have succeeded in building a network by connecting various organizations such as Indian Ambedkarite Women Forum Nagpur, uh, Buddha Dhamma Beam Sangha by Rucha Jivne, Stri Vajin Foundation by Hemangi Kadlak, and many more. We are actively working on spreading knowledge and awareness about Dhamma and encourage women to participate in social activities. Kudos to all these women for their valuable contribution. Let us proceed further with our first guest speaker, Dr. Alka Dhoke. Dr. Alka ma'am is an MD in gynecologist. She has worked as a senior lecturer in Government Medical College, Nagpur for over 10 years. She was owner and director of Kamal Memorial Maternity Home for over 7 years. She was also an associate professor in MNR Medical College, Hyderabad. She was also a specialist at GB Pant Hospital, Port Blair, Andaman and Nicobar. She is currently doing private practice in Worli, Mumbai. She has also been active in social and religious work for the past 20 years. She is very supportive of atrocity cases. Presently, she is deeply involved in Payal Tadvi's case. So, on behalf of Mahaprajapati Upasika Sangha, it's my great honor to welcome you, ma'am. You are an inspiration for all of us, and I would like to request you to share your views on women liberation movement and Buddhism in India.
Thank you very much, Trupti, Rucha, and consultant and guide of our Mahaprajapati Upasika Sangha, Mr. Mangesh Dahiwale. First of all, I pay my homage to a Sakya, blessed with high lineage, noble parentage, possessed of considerable riches, in the bloom of youthful vigor, accomplished in mind and body, who fought his king's mane for the sake of maintaining peace on earth and goodwill towards men, the Tathagat Gautam Buddha. And the greatest Buddhist scholar, philosopher, and follower responsible for revival of Buddhism in India, the greatest Indian Bodhisattva, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. Bandami, Reverend Aya, Santusika, all members of Mahaprajapati Upasika Sangha, and my dear brothers and sisters. In 21st century, women of India have taken a great stride in path of progress, be it educational field, economic, social, cultural, or political. They excelled in each and every field. But hold it, this is the picture projected in front of the world. Actual picture is not true. It is quite different, because only few % of women of society are enjoying rights and privileges, quality education, occupation, depending on the accident of birth. And majority of women of Bahujan Samaj are victim of a special, unique, never seen or imagined by world, a system called Chaturvarna system, created by self-styled supermen called Brahmins. So, before going in depth of the subject, I will highlight Chaturvarna system in brief. The pattern of invisible Chaturvarna system, they named it ideal society, was based upon certain rules. Society should be divided into 4 classes: Brahmins, Kshatriya, Vaishyas, and Shudras. Brahmins to be at the top and Shudras to be lowest of all. Second rule was that There cannot be social equality among these four classes. They must be bound together by rule of graded inequality, which govern the question of rights and privileges. Brahmins had all rights and privileges, and Shudras, they were not entitled to any right and privileges. His privilege was to subsist without offending the three superior classes. Regarding occupation, the occupation of Brahmin was learning and teaching and performances of religious observances. Kshatriya's occupation was fighting, Vaishya's trade, and Shudra's service of three superior classes. The occupation assigned were exclusive. One class could not trace upon the occupation of the other. The fourth rule was right to education. The right to education was given to first three classes. The right to education was not denied only to Shudras, but also to all women, including those belonging to the class of Brahmins, Kshatriya and Vaishyas. Also, for Shudras and women belonging to all classes, the door of religious knowledge was not open. Such was the divine pattern of ideal society called Chaturvarna system. Further, Brahmins idealized the rules, and to make it unremovable, permanent in the mind of people, they embedded it in Vedas. Vedas is a collection of mantras, chants, prayers for help and for help against enemies, for gift of wealth, for accepting the offerings of food, flesh, and wine from devotee. Buddha discarded the mantras as he saw that was morally, he saw nothing that was morally elevating. In his view, Vedas were as worthless as desert. But cunning Brahmins made it sacred, infallible, and not to be questioned. Salvation of soul can be had only by the due performance of Vedic sacrifices and observation of religious rites and ceremonies and the offering of gifts to Brahmins. As Chaturvarna system was embedded in Vedas, so it was sacred and infallible. In the midst of the darkness of ignorance, there came the light from enlightened one, the Buddha. With his principles of liberty, equality, fraternity, and justice, and Prajna, Shil, Maitri, Karuna. His religion was discovery. It is the result of inquiry and investigation into the condition of human life on earth and understanding of the working of human instinct with which man is born. With 6 years of austerities and mortification of severe sort and 4 weeks of meditation, he discovered the truth. He discovered the truth that there is suffering and unhappiness in the world. He found out that the cause of suffering is greed, hatred, and ignorance. And path to remove suffering is Arya Ashtangik Marga. The Buddhism was social and religious revolution of Buddha. Buddha was upholder of gender equality and liberty. He had great faith on women's ability. He believed that women are as much as capable as men in the matter of reaching Nibbana. Likewise, women of his times had great faith on Buddha and his Dhamma, and faith he expressed on capabilities of women in reaching Nibbana. The Mahaprajapati was first woman in history of India to take initiative in asking the permission to Buddha to enter the Sangha. She asked so to the Buddha when he visited Kapilvastu, but Buddha denied the permission merely on practical grounds. Then Mahaprajapati Gautami, leader of 500 women including Yashodhara, of non-monarchical state of Sakya, sat together to give further consideration to their request for admission to the Sangha and the refusal of Lord to grant such a request. They decided to cut off their hair and put on orange colored robes to become parivrajakas and then ask permission to Buddha. At that time, Buddha was staying in Vaishali. Mahaprajapati Gautami with her companions walked all the way from Kapilvastu to Vaishali on barefoot. Buddha again denied. Finally, after Bhante Ananda's intervention, Buddha agreed to grant permission, subject to 8 conditions which were on practical grounds. Mahaprajapati took responsibility for the enforcement of the 8 chief rules, which were regarded as having received the Upasampada initiation, that means entry into the Sangha. Thus, Mahaprajapati received ordination, and also 500 Shakya women were also ordained same time. Blessed One taught Dhamma to Mahaprajapati and the doctrine and discipline, and 500 women bhikkhunis were instructed by Nandaka, one of the disciples of the Blessed One. Yashodhara, after her ordination, came to be known as Bhadda Kachayana. The purpose of giving detail of these incidents is to express feeling of women all over the world for exemplary work Mahaprajapati had done for us. I see merits of Mahaprajapati and 500 women to reach Nibbana. What a noble goal! What a sacrifice, strong determination to leave worldly pleasures, to become homeless and enter the homeless state, and the doctrine and disciple proclaimed by Buddha. What a faith on Buddha and his Dhamma. What a unity amongst the women. And what a great leadership of Mahaprajapati Gautami. What a glorious thing it would have been to become a mother of Samyak Sambuddha. Speaking about Yashodhara, she was already on spiritual path of Buddha. She was practicing Nekkhamma and Upekka before becoming Bhikkhuni. When Siddhartha Gautama took Parivraja, she heard that he had shaved his head. She did likewise. When she heard that he had left off the use of perfumes and ornaments, she also refused their use. Likewise, her husband. She used to eat at appointed times from an earthen bowl. At that time, she was staying in a palace, and Siddhartha Gautama was in forest. Still, I see the sacrifice and the Yashodhara had done right from the Bhikkhuni, and that means we should learn how to practice Nekkhamma and Upekha. At least we can reduce our greed in our life. And looking at after understanding the great benefit of Dhamma to mankind, she gave permission to 7-year-old son Rahul to get admitted in Sangha. Buddha praised Yashodhara for her great merits and great courage. When he took Parivraja, her beauty, her gentleness, her devotion had been invaluable to him as a bodhisattva. When he aspired to be the highest aim of mankind to attain enlightenment. In her last meeting with Buddha, she did not ask permission to die, nor did she go to him to seek him as a refuge. On the contrary, she said to him, "Me sarnamathano, I am my own refuge." She came to thank him because it was he who had shown her a way and given her the power. She had conquered all cankers in her life. In Upadan section of Khudak Nikaya, Yashodhara was conferred upon the title of Arhat. In Buddha's time, there was Vishakha. She was a wealthy woman of Shravasti and was known for her generosity. Through all her life, she donated robes for the rainy season to the bhikkhus of Sangha, also food, medicine for sick bhikkhus of Sangha, and constant supply of rice milk for the Sangha, and bathing robes for bhikkhunis. She did it for peace, feeling of content, and exercise of her moral power. She had abiding faith on Buddha and his Dhamma, but her father-in-law, Migara, was follower of Niganthas. To make him follower of Dhamma, Buddha and his Dhamma, Vishakha arranged sermon of Buddha. After listening the sermon, Migara became a convert. I think we Upasikas should learn the Dan Padmita from the Vishakha Upasika. After rise of Buddhism, these were the women of Buddha's time. Now I will move forward. After rise of Buddhism, Ashoka the Great promoted Buddhism across ancient Asia. He ruled from 268 BC to 232 BC. Moreover, to spread Buddhism out of India, he sent his son Mahindra and daughter Sanghamitra to Sri Lanka. It was because of great efforts of King Ashoka, his son Mahindra and daughter Sanghamitra, and also Chinese Buddhist monk Hunseng. Buddhism still continues to be dominant religion of Asia, China, Burma, and Indochina. Then, in 185 BC to 149 BC, after counter-revolution by general of army Pushpamitra Sunga, who killed King Bruhadrath, there was downfall of Buddhism. In counter-revolution period, there was downfall in status of women due to severe restriction imposed on them by Manu, the greatest opponent of Buddhist religion. It was in this period the two classes, Shudras and women, whose humanity was mutilated by Brahmanism, had no power to rebel against system. They were denied the right to education, with the result that by reason of their enforced ignorance, they could not realize what had made their condition so degraded. They could not know that Brahmanism had robbed them completely of the significance of their life. Instead of rebelling against Brahmanism, they had become the devotee and upholders of Brahmanism. Hence, in this period of counter-revolution, we don't see any women liberation movement. In 19th century, there was major contribution by Savitribai Phule. She was India's first female teacher. She was educationalist, poet, social reformer. She worked to abolish discrimination and unfair treatment of people based on caste and gender. With her husband Mahatma Jyotiba Phule, she opened many schools in Pune. She is regarded as an important figure of the social reform movement in Maharashtra. In 20th century, Ramabai Ambedkar, wife of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, was instrumental in helping him pursue his higher education and his true potential. She was symbol of humility, resilience, and compassion. She was greatest inspiration for Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Her steadfast nature helped her overcome those difficulties. She held her head high amidst the social injustices and atrocities that occurred, and was a source of support and motivation to Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar while fighting along with him to uplift the oppressed. Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, the revolutionary of 20th century, has played a vital role in securing basic human rights for women in general and women of minority community. His first demand of adult franchise, which was met in the early 20s after resistance from the Brahmins, gave voting rights to untouchables and to women. That was the beginning of an era of liberation for women. Women of India are unaware of this fact. Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar was a great believer in women's organization. He said that if women are convinced, they can do a lot to improve the condition of society. In the eradication of social evils, they have rendered great service. Hence, Babasaheb's words, I measure the progress of society by the degree of progress which women have achieved. That is why in each and every protest of Babasaheb, be it a Mahar Satyagraha, Kalaram Mandir Satyagraha protest, women attended in large numbers. Through the Constitution of India, as the chairman of the Constitution Drafting Committee, Dr. Ambedkar was instrumental in granting equal status to all the citizens, irrespective of sex, caste, and creed. Thus, women first time got equal status lawfully. The pioneering work of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar was Hindu Code Bill, He prepared this bill to empower women by way of giving property rights and giving rights in many other matters like marriage, adoption, divorce, etc. However, Orthodox Hindus with mindset of Manusmriti did not allow this bill to be passed in parliament and as it is, and Baba Sahib Ambedkar had to resign. In India, main reason for social suffering of women is caste system and Hindu Shastras still control the mindset of the people. Like Buddha, Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar wanted ideal society based on liberty, equality, fraternity, and justice. He had incorporated these principles in Constitution of India, and he proudly stated that he has not taken them from French Revolution, he has taken from Buddhism. Revival of Buddhism in India is because of Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar, who along with 5 lakh followers embraced Buddhism on 14th October 1956 at Diksha Bhumi, Nagpur. The Dhamma Diksha Vidhi was attended by a large number of women, mainly from Maharashtra. Thereafter, anniversary celebration is attended by women with their children from all corners of India. I have experienced that movement of spread of Buddhism is carried forward by these women who are little bit illiterate and economically poor. They go to nearby viharas regularly, take Vandana and celebrate Buddha Jayanti, Baba Sahib Jayanti. But sad part is that there are no bhikkhus or bhikkhunis in viharas to teach them Dhamma. Neither educated Buddhist upasak or upasikas are there. Although educated and occupying higher posts, they are yet to come out from Hindu sanskar. That is why Baba Sahib prescribed 22 oaths at time of Dhamma Diksha Vidhi. Also, second reason is that because of social inequality and there is no liberty, Buddhist people have to invest their time in solving lot of social issues created by caste and caste discrimination. But we must practice Dhamma, spread the Dhamma envisioned by Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar. Because, and for this, I recommend to our Buddhist people to read Buddha and his Dhamma texts to gain the knowledge of Buddhism. Because Baba Sahib studied Buddhism not more than 21 years and he had written this book in depth to give a scientific knowledge of Buddhism. Baba Sahib says that men are mortals, so are ideas. An idea needs propagation as much as plants need watering. Otherwise, both will wither and die. He further states that duty of Buddhist is not only to be a good Buddhist, but his duty is to spread Buddhism, and to spread Buddhism is to serve humanity. Thank you very much. Jai Bhim, Namo Buddhaya.
Thank you, Dr. Alka ma'am, for your insightful speech. It is indeed a wonderful to know the contribution of women in Buddhist history. The story of Mahaprajapati Gautami is relevant even in today's day and age. You shared stories of women who not only supported their partners, but built their own identity. We can definitely take a lot of inspiration from it. And lastly, because of the contribution of Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar, women in India are able to exercise basic rights. He has provided us with a voice and platform to further the women liberation movement. On behalf of Mahaprajapati Sangha, I am thankful to you for sharing this valuable information. It's our honor to have you with us on this special occasion and really appreciate your contribution to this event. Thank you once again. Now I'll proceed further. I would like to introduce our next guest speaker, Reverend Aya Samputita. Aya Sanchasika grew up on a farm in the USA near Chicago, raised two children, and was a software designer and engineer before ordaining as a bhikkhuni in the Theravada tradition. She began meditation practice in 1970s but didn't meet up with the Dhamma until 1998 when her son moved to Thailand to become a monk in the Ajanta lineage of Thai forest tradition. Through many visits to see her son in the monasteries in Thailand, she was able to learn from the master teachers. She also trained to be an interfaith minister in a 4-year seminary and received a master's degree of divinity degree in 2002. Her faith and understanding of Dhamma developed. She aspired to become a nun. She first took her robes in 2005 and trained at Dhammadharini Vihara in Fremont, California, Chitrast and Amravati monasteries in the UK, and Aloka Vihara in San Francisco. She co-founded Karuna Buddhist Vihara in 2012. She currently lives, where she currently lives, located in Boulder Creek Vihara in 2000, Boulder Creek Vihara in North California. Sorry about that. She teaches Dhamma as it applies to life experience, drawing from Pali Canon. So, on behalf of Mahaprajapati Upasika Sangha, it's my great honor to welcome you, Aya, and would like to request you to share your views on women liberation movement and Buddhism.
Thank you so much, Trupti. It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you talking about this very important subject. And I hope that we can find understanding and inspiration, especially as we look at the great teachings of the Buddha and also at how Dr. Ambedkar came to the wisdom and understanding of the Buddha's teachings to bring that to his people. It's an amazingly wonderful gift, as I'm sure you are all well aware. And thank you, Dr. Alka. Those words were beautiful. What a lovely representation of the history, especially in the way that women played a role. So as you can see, and you know from Trupti's introduction, I'm a bhikkhuni, fully ordained Buddhist nun, following the form that the Buddha gave 2,500 years ago. And we are so fortunate because the Buddha had this understanding of the nature of reality. So the Buddha's discovery of the Dhamma revealed to him the way we can end suffering, that we can go beyond dukkha and beyond the continued recurrence of life again and again in samsara. But more than that, he saw how that is possible for all human beings. He recognized that there's no difference, as Dr. Alka said, between men and women in this regard. That women have every bit as much ability to become awakened and have a tremendous ability for compassion and kindness. You know, obviously there are differences between men and women, differences in our conditioning, differences in the way that men and women have evolved. Women, because we have this amazing gift to bring new life into the world and to care for these children, to care for people, there's a tendency and ability to really bring forward the kindness and the compassion that the Buddha discovered and developed in himself. And I think that this is powerful. And it's, of course, much more than that. When we have women teachers, when we have women leaders, then they're able to communicate in a way that's different from the way that men do. And both are needed. Women need to, when women come into roles of leadership and teaching, there are many women who can be inspired by that and can also follow in their footsteps. And this was happening 2,500 years ago. As far as I know, Buddhism was the only religion where women had equal status. And unfortunately, after the Buddha died, and really many years later, women's ordinations as bhikkhunis stopped. So now when the Buddha gave ordination to women, he gave them the same ordination that he gave to men. So the monks, the male monastics are called bhikkhus, and he gave the ordination to women, and they're called bhikkhunis. The same exact thing. He told the monks to teach the bhikkhunis everything that he had taught to them. So the bhikkhunis were given all of the Dhamma and all of the Vinaya, all of the discipline for monastic life, because the Buddha wanted to create for everyone, men and women who wanted to live a lay life in a wholesome way where they could practice well and develop their minds, and also to men and women who wanted to live a monastic life, the holy life. And so they could practice and develop their minds in the most favorable kind of container and structure. This is an incredible, incredible gift. And during the previous 1,000 years, full ordination has been denied to women. The reason that we are given is that there was a time when the order of bhikkhunis died out because of war, because of famine, because of all kinds of conditions. We all know that when there are really harsh conditions in a culture, women suffer more. We're more vulnerable. And so the bhikkhunis probably had to flee, hide, and I'm imagining that many may have carried on their practice in private. But this idea that the bhikkhus who kept the tradition going, which we're all very grateful for, to keep the teachings preserved well, to carry that down through the many generations. What they also carried down through the generations was the idea that if you didn't have any bhikkhunis around to ordain new bhikkhunis, new fully ordained nuns, you couldn't have any fully ordained nuns anymore. So of course, there were people, many women who would have liked to have that form that the Buddha gave. And there were monks who felt that this was incredibly unfair. And some of the monks that I know in Sri Lanka began to investigate how they could reinvigorate, reestablish bhikkhuni ordination, full ordination for women. So I think one of the things we can learn from this is how important it is that men and women work together for the equality and support of everyone, which is really wonderful. And because of their efforts, starting in the 1970s, they were able to pave the way for this to happen. And in the mid-1990s, there was the first modern times bhikkhuni ordination in Sarnath, India. And it was an ordination of Sri Lankan women who had been living a monastic life for some time with renunciation, nekama, with diligence, but they did not have full ordination. So now they had this opportunity, and These women who are already well trained were given this ordination, and then from there they trained other women to receive full ordination as bhikkhunis. And one of those women in that very first ordination was my preceptor. Aya Sudarshana is her name. She currently lives in the United States, in the state of Florida. She came to California to support and provide my ordination along with many other bhikkhunis, because we need a group to do that. And also the monk who was the one who created the ordination there in California, in Los Angeles, with Aya Sudarshana as my preceptor, is Bhante Piyananda, and he was one of those first monks who had the vision and the commitment to bring full ordination back for women. So this has been quite the journey, because restarting this great practice, tradition, form that could give women the opportunity to fully follow what the Buddha taught has been challenging, because it's like starting afresh without much structure to support, and being able to establish places where women could come to learn the Dhamma and train takes time. So here we are 25 or so years later, and now we have small monasteries of bhikkhunis here in America and all in Australia and in various places in Europe, and also many, many bhikkhunis in Sri Lanka. There are still countries where this is officially banned. They don't want to have full ordination for women. This is a problem that comes with any kind of privilege. Those who have the privilege to be the ones who, have the education, have the training, have the authority, have the power, it's hard for them to see the importance or even the struggle, the challenge for those who don't. But for any of us who have experienced some form of discrimination or abuse, we can have an open heart and compassion and empathy for anyone who has experienced those ways of being and mistreated. And because of that, we can help each other, really empathize, try to see past our own prejudices and blind spots, and support each other in our development. So this has been a little bit of the story of the bhikkhuni ordination, and one of the things that we do is that we really look not at the last 1,000 years where there's been this distortion in the practice of Buddhism, but back to the time of the Buddha, where he gave this and really believed in this equality, the fundamental birthright of all human beings to be free from suffering, to be treated with respect, to be supported in developing their mind and developing their practice. I wanted to bring a few words from the Buddha to you about this. So there's a teaching of the Buddha that you find in the middle length discourses, or the Majjhima Nikaya, where he talks about the things that actually create a distinction in human beings and the things that do not. And what that means is that there are many characteristics that human beings look at to discriminate against one another, to put oneself above another, to limit the rights and privileges of others, to look down upon them. And the Buddha said that these things really aren't what's important. And I'll give you the list. He talked about the things that ways in which we are different from each other that really don't make a difference in who we are, in our nobility, in our birthright. And this is where he begins. He says there's no distinctive mark in the hair or the head or the ears or eyes, mouth, nose, lips, or eyebrows. So if you have any differences like that, who cares? It doesn't matter, right? Or in our shoulders or neck or belly or back or buttocks or breast, or in our gender, or in our, he even says, in our ways of mating. There's no distinction in any of these that relates to our nobility, to our goodness. These are things that really don't matter. Not in our hands or feet or fingers or nails or knees or thighs, or in our color or in our voice. None of those are distinctive marks based on birth. He said, in human bodies in themselves, nothing distinctive can be found. That all the distinctions human beings make are purely verbal designation. It's just labels that human beings create to discriminate against one another. These are the words of the Buddha. He had this very clear. And then he talks about the things that do matter, that we can look at and really evaluate ourselves and the people around us to see their greatness. And these kinds of things are about our character. That, we come to a point where we stop clinging, where we set aside greed and hatred and delusion, where we give up violence, where we are no longer shaken by the things that happen to others in the world. In other words, injustices. It's important that we stand up for what's right, but don't get taken down by the behaviors of others. We maintain our dignity and we maintain our inner stability. He talked about how we can recognize the nobility of those who are humble and virtuous, kind and compassionate, with deep understanding, who are wise, and who really practice the path, practice the precepts. And finally, to become fully enlightened. It's a long passage, and I won't read everything, but I think you get the point. It's like what we do to develop our heart according to the teachings of the Buddha, according to the Dhamma. This is how we develop. This is how we become more happy, stable, and free. So when we are working to help women rise up out of poverty, out of the vulnerability that we can be in, we want to look at two levels in a way, the way the Buddha did. I mean, he taught us how to develop our mind, how to behave in action and speech, and even in the way we think. He taught us how to discover and develop in the Dhamma. And this is very important, our inner work. And also, it's very important to see the truth of the way people act and the way that things are happening in the world, so that we can stand up for right action on a larger scale, as I know you do. This is part of the reason for this organization, the Mahaprajapati organization, to exist. That we use this day, this International Women's Day, to acknowledge the great accomplishments of women, and to also recognize how we can help to work against the kinds of abuse that women suffer from. I'm 68 years old, and I've lived in America almost all my life. And when I was young, a teenager in high school, there was a Equal Rights Amendment that went before the government to try to establish an amendment to the U.S. Constitution to declare that women should have equal rights with men. It seems like a very odd thing to be happening in the 1970s in such a country as America, in the United States. But that's what was going on, and you know what was really shocking? It didn't pass. They didn't add that amendment to the Constitution. And I remember the heated discussions among my family and the other people that I knew. Many people felt that it was a mistake to try to give women equal rights. Even then, I mean, women, of course, had the right to vote for a long time already. They had the right to take work outside the home, but there was such a fear that this would somehow degrade the fabric of our culture, that the roles that men and women played would become confused, and there was some kind of threat. But of course, even though the amendment didn't pass, the conversation about it really caused changes in society, and we had people like Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who worked tirelessly to change the laws that discriminated against women in America. Even though the country says it has these values of equality for everyone, it really doesn't happen as fully as it should happen in practice. And so there's still a need to be aware and to speak out against abuse. So when there was a point in time when I did some volunteer work for a place that was working to stop domestic violence and help women who were being subjected to domestic violence. Because if you think about it, first of all, why do we even have an International Women's Day? It's because in every culture, in every society, almost without exception, I'm told there are a few exceptions over the span of human history, but almost in every place, women are, I'm looking for a word, oppressed. And this is why we have to have International Women's Day, to, remind the world that women can do anything with their minds, with their will, with their creativity, with their determination, and that women are oppressed not only in the public sphere, on the national level, the society level, but also at home sometimes, and that we need to provide help to be safe, safety for them. So I did some volunteer work for this organization, and that they had a shelter for women who were in danger, for them and their children, and they also had a part of the organization was teaching people about domestic violence. So I was in that group. We had a program called Teen Dating Violence Prevention, and we would talk to girls and boys, high school age, sometimes even younger, about the warning signs. because you don't want to only help the people who will suffer from abuse, but you want to help the people who will create that abuse. And there are times when it's not the male as the aggressor and the female as the victim. It happens the other way sometimes too, but of course most of the time it's the women who are abused. And just trying to help people understand those dynamics, that the abuse, it really comes from wanting power and control. And when we want to use power and control against someone in a way that's abusive or violent, it comes from feeling afraid and insecure, and from delusion, ideas that are fundamentally flawed, that are bringing suffering to the person who holds those ideas and to all the people around them. So how can we help people become more wise and more kind? And really, I think it was helpful to teach people about the warning signs that this could be coming. The ways in which the early signs of someone wanting to have power and control over another person. And I think that that's useful. But the greatest use is to learn about Dhamma. Even for people who wouldn't pick up Buddhism as a religion, to see with clarity, with the kind of clarity that the Buddha had about how we should treat each other. Practice not killing, even tiny living beings. Practice not stealing. Practice telling the truth and not lying. Practice being respectful of others around sexual energy and respectful of ourselves. And to avoid drugs and alcohol. If everyone could live by those 5 precepts, first of all, the purification of the mind would be tremendous. We would be able to see our own urges in the direction of greed, hatred, and delusion. And we can help others to see this too. People will see our example. So one of the ways in which women make such a difference is to be a good example in the world. They're an example for their children, but they're an example for everyone. Example for the people they work with. Example for the people that they socialize with. And if we, pick up this practice of virtue, this is the basis, the root. The Buddha said. He said, if you practice good virtue, then it's natural to not have regrets. And when he said, when you don't have regret, then you have joy. And that when you have joy, then it's just so natural to have spiritual joy, to have the heart open and happy and really grateful for the Buddha and the Dhamma and the enlightened Sangha, and to recognize that enlightenment is possible in this lifetime. This is what the Buddha taught, and it's still true. And this is just as true for women as for men. And when we give this kind of example to the world, then people who are interested in improving their lives can see it and follow it too. And the Buddha said that when you have this kind of spiritual joy, then it's easy to have your mind become concentrated, really experiencing samadhi and peace inside. And when that happens, then we see the way things actually are. We lose our interest in pursuing all kinds of activities that are based on greed, hatred, and delusion. And this is the path to awakening. And it's a path of joy and happiness. And as we are examples like this in the world, and we developed, as Dr. Alka was saying about Yashodhara, that idea that she was a refuge unto herself. The Buddha said, be an island unto yourself. And we all have that ability. And when we do that, we can we can really provide a kind of energy in the world that helps to bring more good, more peace, more respect for one another. And we'll have that kind of respect for ourselves. So when there's abuse, when there's oppression, we'll have more wisdom about knowing how to handle it. And we need to be able to help people in this way, and also in the more practical ways that Dr. Alka was talking about. You know, like I had the opportunity to serve on the board of directors for Buddhist Global Relief for a number of years. They had a lot of projects to help women, young women, and women of any age, but women and girls to gain education and have a good livelihood and to be able to take charge of their lives and walk away from abusive situations. And this has been really helpful. So we keep working on both these levels, internal and external, and really bring a tremendous love and respect for all women and for all men who support women, and also provide excellent examples of what a man can be in this world, who respects and helps others. This is really living a worthwhile life, one that actually ends with greater merit and greater goodness than we started with. This is really worth our effort. And I want to say that I have tremendous respect for Dr. Ambedkar. I think the way he handled the situation he was born into, the way he sought a solution for everyone in that situation, the way he sought the answer, kind of the way the Buddha did, and the way he found Buddhism and recognized that this is really the way to free ourselves. So I hope those words are helpful. And I'm also happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for your, after hearing your discourse, it was eye-opening for us. You highlighted about Aya Sudarshana, your preceptor for establishment of monks, and challenges that for getting a full ordination of women. Again, you also highlighted the importance of International Women's Day to remind the world that women can do as much as men with their minds, creativity, and determination. Your volunteer work on teen getting violence prevention is really awesome, which works to manage the abuse on women. Yeah. Okay. So I would like to share my experience with Aya Santushika. I have known Aya for last 3 years. I attended her weekly sutta sessions where she teaches Dhamma and how we can apply it in our daily lives, referring to Pali Canon. Little bit about practice on Karuna Buddhist Vihara. The common theme is interest in traditional Theravada teachings from the Pali Canon as practiced and presented by ordained monastics in English as they relate to modern Western culture. She also offers meditation instruction, Dhamma talks, and retreats for wide variety of groups outside Karuna Buddhist Vihara. I would like to encourage you all to visit their website karunabv.org to know more about her work and her teachings. On behalf of Mahaprajapati Upasika Sangha, I would like to thanks once again Reverend Aya. We really appreciate your contribution to this event. We are very grateful to have you in our forum to enlighten us with your knowledge. We would like to continue our connectivity so that you can also share your knowledge often or in upcoming events. Thank you so much. Now, I will encourage audience if they have any questions for Aya and Dr. Alka Dhoke, you are feel free to ask questions. Please post your questions over chat and also mention the name of the speaker for whom the question is intended to. Thank you.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
Myself, Dr. Satish. I'm speaking from India, from Chhattisgarh. My question is to Banteji Aya. And question is, what are the challenges for the Bhikkhuni Sangha there in West, and how does it compare to the Indian scenario?
I think the challenges in the West really are still around training and having the resources for places for women to ordain. Traditionally, the training in Theravada Buddhism comes from being living closely with a teacher, and we are able to do that with the bhikkhunis who have now had more than 20 years of experience. But in the long-term view, it's really quite new. So we are gradually gaining more places and helping women get ordained and be able to study and practice and learn from one another. So I would say those are some of the challenges that we have. There are still challenges because the bhikkhu organizations, individual monks, bhikkhus are supportive of bhikkhuni ordination and of women being bhikkhunis and teaching and all of that. But the organizations themselves in Sri Lanka, in Thailand, in Burma, and other Buddhist countries still deny the existence of bhikkhunis. Officially, it's still considered, to either they believe or say we don't exist, or that it shouldn't be happening. And I think if the lay people were to place some, more. Bring more awareness to the desire for women to be fully ordained and to be able to teach and support people, it would be really helpful. It's going to take some concerted effort by many people, I think, to get them to change their way of seeing things and their policies. Because, if we imagine what the world would be like with many, many fully ordained nuns giving their life to learning and studying the Buddha's teachings and giving their life to service for their communities, it's a beautiful vision, and it would be so helpful to our society in so many ways. And so, that's really the thing that I think would be good to put attention to. And part of that is to help the bhikkhus, who actually in this case are the ones with privilege, to recognize their own blind spots about this issue. This is the hard thing. I wish I could speak with more knowledge about comparing to what's happening in India, but from what I understand, India is really in need of these establishments for bhikkhus and bhikkhunis in India to help teach people about Buddhism and give them good places to practice. But I don't really have enough first-hand knowledge on the ground, you might say, in India. I know that we need to help women be able, as Buddhist Global Relief does, and I'm sure many other organizations and many of the things Dr. Alka has done, and to help women rise up out of poverty and develop their own abilities to earn money and to be able to have the freedom to practice Dhamma and live their lives in wholesome ways without threat or abuse or oppression. I think that everywhere in the world we need to make progress in this way and really help each other.
Thanks, Venerable. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Aya Karuna, Aya Santustika from Karuna Buddhist Vihara. We are really blessed to have you here with us today. And you thoroughly described the situation, the practical situation, I must say, because Buddhism believes and talks a lot about the equality. But when it comes to gaining the rights as women as equal to men, it's a struggle. It's still a struggle in 21st century also. So it's so surprising when the opposition comes from the Bhikkhu Sangha, which is the strongest pillar among the 4 pillars of the Buddha and his Dhamma. So I'm really glad to know that you have struggled and you are struggling for the Bhikkhuni Sangha's empowerment and establishing the strong foundation for the Bhikkhuni Sangha in West. And I'm really glad you have knowledge and you have acknowledged Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar's work, and you know the real situation, what he has gone through. My question to you is that while establishing the Bhikkhuni Sangha, Mahapajapati Gautami was to accept the 8 Garudhamma. So, what is the relevance of that 8 Garudhammas in today's date? I'm curious to know.
Yeah, thank you. So scholars have done a lot of work in the last 10 or 15 years around this issue, and it's not clear to them that the Buddha actually did that. So that's one question, it's not clear that that was original to the time of the Buddha. It might have been added later. But let's just say for the moment that he did those 8 rules. I think if that's true, it was for the purpose of trying to establish a way that the monastic sangha of men and the monastic sangha of women could interact in a way that's wholesome. The bhikkhunis have rules that protect us. Some of the rules in those 8 are not really rules in our monastic code in the Patimokkha, which is kind of interesting, one of the reasons why there's some question about their authenticity. But when you look at some of the rules that the bhikkhunis have, they protect us from falling into the customary roles of taking care of the men. We're not allowed to wash their robes. We're not allowed to wait on them. So these are the kinds of things you can imagine at the time of the Buddha. Many of the people who ordained were ordaining, and they knew each other already. They were already, the husbands and wives would ordain, mothers and sons would ordain, brothers and sisters would ordain, and you could imagine how natural it would be to treat each other in the same way as they would have in domestic life. And the Buddha had to make it clear that they needed to change that they needed to treat each other with equal respect. That you couldn't have the women becoming subservient to the monks. The bhikkhunis should be standing for and developing their spiritual practice in teaching the Dhamma, and not acting like wives, sisters, mothers in that way that they would have before. So some of those 8 are, I think, for the protection of the bhikkhunis. Some of them look like it's trying to make the bhikkhunis subservient, and there's a real question about whether that's actually from the Buddha. So the way it works these days is really the way we hold it is we are respectful of those who are more senior than we are. We are respectful to good monks. Even at the time of the Buddha, he said if a monk was not being a good monk, you don't have to be respectful to them. Bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, they're human beings and they're not all enlightened. They're still, may do things that are very unskillful, and that should be addressed. Of course, the Buddha was very, very much in favor of rehabilitation. If you do something wrong, you can change and be accepted. And so this is also something, like acknowledge what's wholesome, but also acknowledge what's unwholesome, and do what we can to support each other to be wholesome. And so we are respectful in the ways that those 8 rules would suggest, but we're also fully aware of really the honor, I guess, and the responsibility of what it means to wear these robes and to be respectful of what the Buddha gave. And I think for us, excuse me, it's possible to have the humility and the dignity to really follow what the Buddha originally offered for all of us to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Aya, for answering the question. If I may ask another question, is it okay? So the next question would be, it has been said in Pali Canon that if Bhikkhuni Sangha is formed, then the life of the Buddha and his Dhamma would be lessened by 500 years, and Buddhism would last only for 500 years. And we are today 2,561 something years, and still the pillars are becoming stronger and stronger, all 4 pillars of the Dhamma. So can we make the conclusion, or can we say that this prediction was not the Buddha's words, or it's not the Buddha version? Can we say that?
I think it's very likely the scholars, the people who do the scholarship and study on this, look at it in all the detail of the suttas and the Vinaya. And the Buddha never really predicted things. So this is very odd that he would make such a prediction, and also very odd that it doesn't seem to have panned out to work that way. There are various ideas about what that could have meant or how it could have been included. And there are some other things that you find in some of the texts that are really not in line with what the Buddha taught. You know, there are a couple of places, especially in the numerical discourses, where there's some pretty, it seemed, very hostile attitudes towards women. And this is so different from the Buddha's own voice and the way he held and the way he taught the Dhamma. In general, those texts are very consistent, coherent, and they even are consistent with the same teachings that came down through the lineages in China. The Chinese agamas and the Pali suttas are match very well with a great deal of consistency. Those traveled from India in two very different directions and were separated for millennia, and still they are very consistent today when you look at both. So we trust more the passages that you can see are held and preserved well throughout the centuries. And that is the majority of the Nikayas, of the four great Nikayas. So when you come across this small percentage of words in the texts that are just very contradictory to what the Buddha taught in the other, like maybe 95%, we have to say, well, I think we need to set that aside. Maybe we don't fully decide that was what, maybe there's something that happened there that caused that to be changed. And the Buddha gave this same kind of criteria for us to use to know what is Dhamma and what is not Dhamma. It needed to be consistent with the Buddha's teachings of how Dhamma works. And also, you know, the Dhamma is really something we have to experience directly. This is, it's we learn it, but then we practice meditation and sila and you know, development of our mind in a way that we can experience directly what the Dhamma is. And then it becomes quite clear that some of these things can't possibly be authentic to the Buddha. So I tend to set those kinds of passages aside and focus on the 95% that's consistent and clearly, you know, bringing us along in the right direction. I just can't imagine the Buddha would be in any way discredit women or try to oppress them. It makes no sense.
The seven blames on Ananda is also doesn't seem and doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah.
And do you have there is very less presence or none presence after the Buddha, the Sangiti which has been done, where the Pali canon has been emerged and Tripitaka was formed. The Bhikkhuni Sangha's presence is really negligible. Have you studied on that, or what was the situation after the Buddha when the Sangiti was formed? If you can enlighten us or tell us more on that.
Yeah, I have to admit that I'm not a scholar in that regard, but I do appreciate that the Pali texts were preserved in a way that was very male-oriented, and they kind of left out most of what was happening for the bhikkhunis. Like the Buddha declared Bhikkhuni Patachara, maybe, as the greatest teacher. No, Dhammadina, Bhikkhuni Dhammadina, and we have one discourse of hers. So you know that there were vast amounts of teachings that were not preserved. And of course, that had to be true of the bhikkhus also. You know, we don't have a lot of teachings of some of the great monks either, but the women's voice was clearly less preserved than that of the men. And this just speaks to how ingrained these ideas have always been, that men should be more highly regarded. This, as I said, it appears in all cultures and all societies back through the human existence, except for a very few examples that I don't even personally know very well at all. So, and we have to take into account that this was happening after the Buddha passed away, that the women's voice was less promoted and preserved. But then I think, wow, they preserved the verses of the early nuns, for example, in the Therigatha. They actually did talk about bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, laymen and laywomen, and how, there are various things in there that are quite amazing that they did come down to us. So I try to focus on the positive. We've got things that give us the light, the way to move forward. And then we need to create the experience in ourselves to really understand the Dhamma directly. And this is how we can share, and it has to be consistent with what the Buddha taught. Otherwise, it can't be the true Dhamma. But to really recognize that we'll go farther if we really focus on the positive examples that lead us upwards.
Thank you, Aya, for answering all the questions. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Rucha, for bringing up such a great questions, and I am Santusita to answer them very well. There is a question from our audience, Mahasen, for Alka ma'am. The question is, what were the practical impediments the Buddha was initially apprehensive to induct women into Sangha? Please throw some light on it.
Yeah, they were just on a practical ground, as I say. He created two groups of bhikkhu and bhikkhunis. And he instructed that they should not speak, they should not have contact with each other, and then they should not talk with each other. And if they want to talk, there is necessity of to speak, then they should speak less, like this, just on a practical grounds. And the reason for the creating such rules were that because Buddha knew that the bhikkhu and upasak and upasika entering the Sangha were not away from greed, hatred, anger, and especially the third precept where they will not follow. So he created these 8 rules on practical ground, and the in discussion always there is that discussion is on that Buddha refused the entry of women because he was not following, he was against the sex equality, gender equality. It is not the case, but he was he was in the opinion of this that women were equally entitled to reach Nibbana, and he was upholder of that gender equality. So this is not the reason, and merely on the practical ones, as I mentioned, and there are more 4 or 5 rules that were created on the practical ones.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Mahasan. Thank you, Dr. Alka Dhoke, for answering. Any questions?
Hello, Aditya here. I have a question. So in today's day and age, people have certain values deeply ingrained in their mind, especially about inequality. So how do you recommend to start a healthy debate, or have some progress to change their mind?
Well, of course, it depends upon how deeply that is ingrained. And the Buddha's approach to teaching the Dhamma was to, when someone's doing something, that he would ask them a question of why they're doing that, and then they would tell him, and he would say something like, well, that's not the way we do it in the noble one's discipline. And that would just give them an opportunity to ask. If they're interested, they'll ask, well, how do you do it in the noble one's discipline? And then he could tell them, something different. But he would go about it in a very, gentle, respectful way, really. Because pushing doesn't often bring people into curiosity to learn. And so I like to follow his example in these ways. When we read the suttas, we get a sense of how the Buddha acted, not just what he taught, but the way he did things. And I think that's helpful. So if we can demonstrate something that brings happiness and peace, and then help people be interested in that. And it depends, though, like I said, how deeply ingrained are these issues, and how much are they tied to underlying psychological problems, mental illness, or deep-seated greed or hatred or delusion, these kinds of things that, there are, for some people, they're much stronger than in others. And so sometimes, the Buddha would just walk away. Even with monks, there were the monks who were quarreling in Kosambi. He told them, how important it was to live in harmony. And they said, oh, don't bother with this. This is our responsibility. Basically, they told the Buddha to just forget it and go away. Well, how could you say that to the Buddha? I mean, they were really on the wrong track. And then the Buddha delivered his, like an admonishment to them and left. So we do have to choose how to respond, or how to bring awareness depending upon the situation. A lot of times there are people who say they're wanting to help. They say they want equality. They say they want to support women. But then their actions don't turn out to be the same way. And the little bit that I know about Dr. Ambedkar's life was that he really identified that and called it out. And I think that's what we need to do too, in a way. We need to be able to recognize when people aren't really walking their talk. And when that happens, if we can help them see that and give them tools to learn and see if they're willing to pick that up and try to see their own blind spots. But I don't think it works to just let it slide, to act like it's not happening. And for that, we also have to be aware. And, for any of us, like some of the greatest, some of the people who argued most against the Equal Rights Amendment for women were women. Because we have absorbed and internalized the idea that we should be a lower status. And this is dangerous, and we should try to help each other see that and recognize, what are the deep underlying fears, what are the deep underlying misunderstandings of reality that that need to be corrected. And of course, people have to be willing to change. They have to want that change. So the best way we can do it is to show them a better way to live, to help them see how much they're suffering. You know, if somebody's abusing someone else, they're not happy. They're suffering. If somebody has to, you know, put someone else down and build themselves up, they're not confident. They're not happy. And if we can, you know, help people see that, then there's a chance they can come around and develop.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aditya. Thank you, Aya. There is another question from the audience. I'll consider it as a last question. And of course, audience can reach out to our speakers or different social platform if they have any additional questions. So the last question for Aya is, do you know about the 22 vows given by Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar during conversion ceremony? And if so, what is your opinion about it?
So I'm sorry to say that I don't know about those 22 vows. So I would be happy to read about them and learn more. I know that there were 22 vows. I just recently found out about that, but I don't know what they are. Would the person who's asking the question want to tell me about one or two of them that they have questions about? Maybe I could make a comment on that directly.
No, ma'am. I just wanted to know whether you know about it and your opinion. These are 22 vows, no? So it is a lengthy affair.
Yeah.
So you can read later on and think about it.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe next time we get together, I can
Yes, yes, ma'am.
have an answer.
My intention was that only, that you should go through that and read
Thank
more
you.
about Babasaheb Ambedkar.
Thank you, Mr. Mahasen, for your suggestion. Thank you, Aya. Now, I would like to, it's time for the vote of thanks. I'm thankful to Mahaprajapati Upasika Sangha to giving me an opportunity to be part of this event. Thanks a lot to Reverend Aya Santusika for giving an eye-opening talk on Buddhism. Thanks to Dr. Alka Dhoke for giving in-depth, detailed information about the subject. Thanks to Rucha Jivne, main organizer of Mahaprajapati Upasika Sangha. Thanks to Mr. Mangesh Dahiwale, ex-IAS officer, well-known Buddhist scholar, social activist, known for his work not only in India but internationally. Thanks to Upasikas and Mahaprajapati Sangha. Thanks to Dhamma brothers and sisters who attended the program, without whom the program would not have been successful. Special thanks to Mr. Aditya Dhoke for the assistance. Jai Bhim, Namo Buddhaya. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Photo.
Okay. Yeah.
We'll stay behind for a group picture.
I'll request audience to stay behind for a group picture.
Audience can make their videos on and we can take a picture.
Yeah, I'll request.
With this position.
Do you want me to say, or
we
should I
can
go?
pay our tribute to Aya Santusika. Please be here. We want to take a group picture with you only. We can pay tribute with this hand gestures to Aya Santusika. I will take a picture. Or Aditya is taking picture.
I'll take.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Aditya.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank you. Superb
You all.
anchoring. Superb
Thank,
anchoring, Trupti.
thank you, Rucha. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, Aya. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aya.
Thank you, everyone.
Trupti,
Take good care.
Komal,
Bye-bye.
Madam, Trupti's mom, Papa,
Thank
Aditya's
you.
Papa.
Hello, Jai Bhimal.
Jai Bhim.
Hi.
Okay.
Jai
Okay. So Rekha ji is her mother. Yeah, Jai Bhim.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wait, wait.
Jai
yeah,
Stop
I am
Bhim.
Trupti's mother. Everybody. Happy Women's Day to everybody.